All right, almost 10 games into this strange season. And I think more so than even a regular year, I think we all know like this is kind of weird. This is kind of funky. Some of these records are false. And everybody likes to do the pretenders, contenders thing. And I think we all realize, again, there's a caveat, there's an asterisk behind this start in particular because of the shortened preseason and everything that's going on in the world. We get that. Guys are more out of shape, teams are less in sync. But with that being said, I think that, this is what we do. We discuss these things. I want to talk about some of these teams that look pretty damn good right now here early on and kind of just propose some early questions. I know we're going to have to wait another 10 or 15 games before I think we can maybe be a little more definitive in our takes and in our picks with these teams. But it may never settle down, right? This whole season, this 72 game season, it may just be like a kind of a shocking up and down season where there's a lot of parity throughout the league and no one runs away with their division. And I think that's a good thing. Ultimately, it's kind of like a football method, right? Where nothing's given on a given night, and a given Tuesday night, anybody can beat anybody. That will actually help the NBA in their ratings, if you ask me. Let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks. I think everybody circled them in their offseason as having one of the better off seasons, one of the more shocking off seasons. They've got a young nucleus. They bring in veterans. They bring in Rondo. They bring in Gallinari. Chris Dunn has yet to play for them, right? Well, let's address the negative first here. Why not? I'm a pessimist. Gallo looks like it may have been a bad deal. I mean, you kind of understood it on paper before they got Bogdanovich, but then when they somehow got Bogdanovich, it was like, this is a little excessive. This doesn't quite make sense. I know they don't quite play the same position, but you look at Gallo, you look at his history, and he's always injured. Now he's on the wrong side of 30. He looks a bit heavy, and ankles, feet. It just that may be the move this offseason that you circle and say, that's the one you want to take back, right? But Bogdanovich has played well. And I think more importantly, it's about the young core. Trae Young he's up. I put him tier 1 with the point guards offensively. I think the thing that he has to do moving forward is defensively, he's got to care a little bit more. What do they list him at 6'1"? Maybe with that transparent fro he's got going on, maybe. He's very undersized. I understand that. He's kind of wide-bodied. He's gotten a little stronger. I'm not asking him to be a stopper. I'm asking him to show commitment on that side. There's too many occasions where he's just out in outer space, right? He comes back down the court and he's just not aware. He doesn't care enough. He doesn't put enough effort into things defensively. And in the past, he's gotten a pass because of the offensive load that he's carried. And now he's got a lot more help. I still think there's a little too high usage with him. He has the ball a little bit too much. And I think that should adjust. Hopefully Lloyd Pierce can adjust that as the season goes on. But there's no excuse because here's the bottom line. They draft Cam Reddish. They draft DeAndre Hunter, right? And these guys are kind of like your prototypical 3 and D wings and maybe even more, right? But in order for them to fulfill their potential as stoppers and defensive guys, Trae, believe it or not, he's got to show that he cares. And again, Trae's not going to be that guy, but he's the leader. He's the face of the franchise. You've got to commit on that end in order to show them that that's what they've got to commit to because they're fully capable of it and they're coming along. Hunter, I think, is a nice player, but the real question ultimately is how good can Cam Reddish be? I thought he was a steal. Did they get him at 10, right? Was it part of that New Orleans swap there with Hayes? Or I can't quite remember how they pulled that off in that draft, but they got him, and I felt he was undervalued. I know he didn't interview well, and there were questions about his motor and his passion for the game at Duke, but he was buried at Duke, with behind Zion, behind Barrett. And they had Jones there. I mean, he's not an alpha. We understand that, but you're seeing the talent, the potential, and they're even running some sets. I talked about Trae, handling the ball too much. They do let Cam try to operate and create some stuff. And the reality of it is Cam Reddish has the potential to be a Paul George type player. He is that archetype. And that if he can take that step and be Trae Young's, second star, that is ultimately, I think, the hope for the Hawks. Now, as far as them being a contender this year, I don't see it. They're going to be in the playoffs. I think they're going to be in the playoffs. and they're going to be exciting to watch. I don't think they play good enough defense. Again, Trey's got to set the tone there, and then they just don't have enough experience. I know Rondo's on the bench. Capella's looked all right for them. And then the other thing that I would point out is, how does the chemistry evolve here? Because the writing's on the wall. Can they bring back John Collins? I don't think they can once Bogdanovich and the Gallinari signings happen. They kind of chose that. And it's interesting because you see Collins and Trey's chemistry in that pick and roll game. It's at the top of the league. And for them to let him walk, we'll see if he starts number hunting. And, he's in a contract year, essentially. They can't give him the max. So we'll see how the chemistry works. But ultimately, I think they're a fun playoff team. They don't have the experience, and they're not committed defensively yet. Let's jump over to the Western Conference in the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns have quietly built the identity of kind of like a scrappy, gritty team. Right? They're scrappy. We don't have to go into Chris Paul and Devin Booker. I think the spooky thing is they're not really in sync yet. Like, the Suns are winning, and it's not because really of Devin Booker or Chris Paul yet. I mean, of course they help. They set the table. They're the leaders. But it's really about Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges is becoming what people thought he could be out of Villanova. It's taken a little bit longer. He had to rework that big elongated shot, but now he looks like one of the elite 3-and-D wings. He's a very good defender, and now that he's shooting the three like people thought he could, that's a problem. Cam Johnson, I thought it was a bad pick too. I read that several teams during his draft year a year ago, they red flagged him. They were like, yo, this kid's not going to hold up. Like, we're not touching him in the first round. And then when Phoenix reached for him in the lottery, everybody was kind of dumbfounded, kind of like what they did with the kid out of Maryland this year. And the verdict is still out on him. All I got to say is Tyrese Halliburton looks really nice, right? Can you imagine if you added Halliburton to the Suns roster right now? So I don't know, man. I don't know about that one. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I've said this before, just because of the Cam Johnson pick, because Cam Johnson looks like the second coming of Robert Horry. Like, he's got to be about 6'10", 6'11". He's very long, and the shot is automatic. And then he's got a little more than you think. He can put it down and get to the rim when you run him off that three-point line. So they're deep, right? They're gritty, and I think they're for real. Now, if you took Chris Paul off this team and Jay Crowder, right, that adds to the grit. They were already building that gritty identity, and now you add those two veterans, and that's what I think they have that Atlanta doesn't, and why I say that they are for real contenders. Now, like, are they going to win the championship? Like, let's be clear here. Are they favorites? No. Like, can they get past the Lakers? I don't know. It's going to be rough, but I'm just saying they're for real because of the veterans they've added, the depth they have, and I think Booker is right in that spot. I've said it before, to where he's going to take that step into being considered amongst the elite this year, truly. And so the Suns are fun. What questions do we have? I guess it's the health, right? They're so deep. I think that they're afforded the luxury to kind of ease Chris Paul through the season and not rely on him too much. But it goes without saying, they're going to need CP, they're going to need Crowder, and they're going to need Booker. I haven't even brought up DeAndre Ayton. And this is kind of I think a crossroads for him, even though it's so young in his career. They've got so much scoring, right? They've got a lot of scoring and a lot of shooting. And it's like, what type of player are you going to be? Because coming out of Arizona, everybody thought of him as such an offensive player. Can he kind of buy into being, a rim protector and a rebounder and more of a utility player, like a star utility player? Don't get me wrong. The touch in the mid-range, the elbow, it's soft. I think he deserves touches and to be a part of the offense. I'm just saying, given if you look around his surroundings, they need different things from him. They don't necessarily need him to give you 20 a night. And that's what you're seeing. That's why they're succeeding. He's getting you 12, 13 boards, playing better defense. They don't necessarily need his scoring. And so I believe in the Suns. And I think they're a legit, I'll put it to you like this. Now, of course, I'm not saying they're going to come out of the West. I think they're going to stay in the top 4 all year and finish with home court advantage headed into these playoffs. So they're for real in my eyes. There's me going out on a limb about the Suns. The other team I wanted to talk about was the Brooklyn Nets. What's going on already? There's already some funny stuff going on. The talent is undeniable. They came out of the gates like gangbusters, right? If you pay attention to both Kyrie and Kevin Durant, That's their history. They have a tendency to start the season very hot, particularly Kyrie. And Kyrie's style of play tapers off because it's very inefficient energy-wise. He uses so much energy out there to get done what he gets done, and it's spectacular, right? And it looks really good in the first 15 to 20 games of the season. Game 60, right? He doesn't quite have that energy to do all of that. That's what I see. But they have the talent. I think the question is, this to me, it's Kevin Durant's team, right? And it's on Kevin Durant to be the defensive anchor because we've seen them get in these track meets early on where both teams are scoring 140, 150 points and they can score with the best of them. But Kevin Durant knows ultimately to be a champion, you're going to have to get stops. You're going to have to be able to shut teams down defensively at times. Like come playoff time, you're playing the Bucks, you're playing the Heat, and the offense, the pace is not going to be at the pace you want to play it. It's not going to be a light show. Can you get stops? Now, again, they have the talent to do so, but it's on Durant as the leader to get them to buy in. We know Kyrie is not that type of leader. He's not going to lead by example specifically defensively. So can Durant be the anchor of that defense, get Karis LeVert to buy in? And probably most importantly, DeAndre Jordan, right? I'm watching this DeAndre Jordan, Jarrett Allen platooning situation there. I think there's a place for both of them depending on who you're facing and what type of size, right? But can Durant get them to buy in and say, look, this is what it is, and Nash as well. So I think that I think they're for real. I think when you have that type of talent, you have to take them seriously as a for real contender. But I think they also have the highest variance when you talk about these contenders because, again, what I mentioned here in the beginning with Kyrie, Durant, he looks really good right now, right? But we're still early. They're missing games, and there's just a lot of extra. There's a lot of extra. There's a lot of unknown as far as personalities, chemistry, coaching style, health, right? When you start to write down the questions about this Brooklyn team, there's more questions than there are answers right now. And so, yeah, the talent's there, but let's see what happens. Now, I want to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers, the last team we'll cover today in today's video. If I missed your team, I'm going to get to y'all. Cavs fans, I know you hiked up, right? There's a lot of weird stuff going on. Dallas, Denver, what y'all doing? But anyway, let's talk about the Sixers. They've come out hot. They've done this in the past, but this obviously is a different roster, different coaching staff. Doc Rivers, Seth Curry. Hope he recovers without any trouble here, if you've heard that news, right? But he just fits so well. He fits so well. And he, to me, Seth, has been the biggest jack move of the offseason. Seth Curry for Josh Richardson. He's underrated as a shot creator, right? You think of him as a spot up guy and a kind of a tough little defender, right? He's got some moves to him. He's slowly built the Curry bag, right? And he's got flip shots off the glass, floaters, mid-range game. He kind of reminds me, he kind of has a CJ McCollum type offensive game. Not to that level, right? And he's not quite as big, but he's been very impressive. And here's why it fits so well with Philadelphia is because they can make up for his lack of size. That's the knock. That's why Dallas moved him. They're like, well, we're going to need a little more size on the wing facing the Lakers, Denver, and stuff like that. I understand on paper what they were thinking. But Philadelphia, they're like, that's fine. We can make up for it. We can start a 6'1" guard because we've got Ben and Joel and Tobias. The rest of the lineup is like 6'10", 7 foot, right? So it makes sense. It's a perfect fit. And I think the question for them is, and I may be reaching here, but I think, can Seth be the leader of the team? And you say, well, that's ridiculous, right? Well, I think Joel and Ben are still getting better skill-wise. But I think they are who they are as people. And what I mean by that is neither one of them are leaders. Ben just doesn't talk or communicate enough, right? And then Joel is just too erratic emotionally. He's too much of a goofball. And so they don't really have a leader. And, a lot of people kind of subscribe to the theory that, well, your best player has to be your leader, but that's not always the case. Look in Golden State, right? And so down the stretch of games and when, for instance, when Bradley Beal was lighting him up for 60, how come no one hard fouled Bradley Beal? Like at some point, don't you hammer him? Or who fires everybody up out of a timeout? Like, hey, get this together. This dude is embarrassing us. We're supposed to be a top defense in the league. And you don't see anybody doing that, right? Look, Joel, I don't know about you, but he makes me nervous much like Giannis at the end of games. Now, his bag is much bigger and versatile, and that's almost the problem. Less is more with Joel. I'm watching him do a face-up jumper, right? He takes 4 jab steps, 3 pump fakes, and then lets it go. Like, all he needs is 1 jab, 1 pump, and 1 shot. Less is more. And so he makes me nervous for the opposite reason that Giannis makes me nervous. With Giannis late in games, you're like, well, you already know what he's going to do, right? He's going to go hard left and try to spin back right, and they're going to build a wall, right? With Joel, it's like, well, he feels like he can do everything. What is he going to do? Is he going to try a step back 3? Is he going to try a drop step pivot foot? Is he going to go to a fadeaway, right? There's like too much options for him. And so can Seth, be that vet that kind of calms things down when the game slows down and they are in the playoffs, and can set the table and make the decisions. I don't want Joel to be the decision maker in late game situations, is what I'm getting at. I think maybe that could be Seth, right? Joel can finish, he can take the shot, but don't let him set the table, right? And then we all know when it slows down into the half court, you really can't have men doing that. So those are my questions. Can Seth Curry, we know he's a nice fit in the regular season, but when push comes to shove, playoff time, slowing down, end of the game, can he set the table and kind of be the leader there? We'll see. We'll see. The Knicks, I don't know. I got to watch more. I'm happy for New York Knicks fans, and I'm curious to see, look, Randall, I've always been a Randall fan, so I don't know if Tibbs, we all know Tibbs is going to get the most out of these guys initially. The question is, how much of a honeymoon phase is this? Seeing it that this is such a strange year, I don't see why they can't slip into the play-in game, and I think that would be a win for you Knicks fans, right? You're not expecting to contend, right? You're not a contender, but if you can be competitive all year and maybe fight for that play-in game and Barrett develops and stuff like that, then I'm happy for y'all. Toronto, the jig is up. The jig is up. Siakam, you got a little bitty bag. Right? But we'll talk about that later. I think the Pels are for real, though. I think the Pels are for real. What do y'all think? Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.